what I was actually in the middle of doing was trying to spin up the testnet with Meet One and Vibes and Argentina and Authority, I think's in there, about the inflation code. So
okay.
Ultimately,
so you guys are going to create your own testnet to test this new code that will reduce the inflation from 5 to 1?
5 to 1, ultimately getting rid of the 4%.
Getting rid of the 4%
tap. That's what we all call it. Turning off the tap.
Turning off the tap.
So we burned the savings, which has already racked up like another million EOS or something already.
Crazy. I heard that video from Kyle.
I don't remember which one it was, but
a short video that talked about that, and he was kind of poking at the fact that, well, they burned the tokens, but the tap is still running.
Correct. I heard it worded the best, is that we're a year into it, almost exactly, right?
Right.
And in that year, $160 million worth of EOS racked up, 34 million EOS, whatever it was. And we're never able to come to a working worker proposal system, or never able to really come to any consensus on anything that to do anything with it. So, all right, I mean, it's been 12 months. It's not like it's going to get any better, but it just continues to grow. Now, to be the general consensus among everybody, not everybody wanted to burn it or turn it off, and of course some people just want to burn, baby, burn. So I think the common ground was, all right, fine, let's at least burn the big pile, because then we're just going to argue about how to distribute 34 million EOS, and somebody's going to game it. I mean,
right.
So let's not. Nobody's going to agree on that anyway. But don't turn it off, because everybody's sold on the idea of, hey, we can still do something with it.
Right.
If you can get everybody to agree to it. Meet One, Vibes, Argentina, Authority. You got to spin up some nodes and invest a little effort into it, so not everybody's immediately available. Internal testing's 1, testnet testing would be 2, and then ultimately roll into mainnet would be 3.
Yeah.
Like I say, we're in support of it.
We're in support of it.
Or at least I am. I know that we've had many conversations about it.
Okay, so let's do talk about that. We're in support of it. Why? We know, but let's talk about it.
Let's see. My opinion, and this overall, and of course, feeble geek speak, is we obviously have, I'm not going to say governance problems, but friction, turmoil. We had $160 million and couldn't figure out a way to distribute that to any of the flourishing dApps or ideas or whatever, which I understand. I mean, it's divisions and political and whatever. But that being said, if you can't come to an agreement on the worker proposal system or anything like that, or where to do with these funds, then you're not gonna, why let the funds build up? Why keep the tap on? Why do all of that? Because you can't come to an agreement of what to do with the funds. It is doing no good other than sitting there and causing more arguments and everything. And fundamentally, if you can turn it off, you can turn it back on. So if you, 15 out of 21, decide, hey, we think we want to turn the tap back on and create the savings and a worker proposal system and all the framework to go along with, and consensus happens, you can turn it back on. But until you can herd the cats to come up with what to do with it, that's the same herding of cats to turn it back on or off or anything like that. So I'm not against it indefinitely. I'm against it because obviously 12 months in, here we are on the year anniversary, and no worker proposal system, no even true agreement. We can't even get all.
Where do we stand with the worker proposal system on EOS? There isn't one, right?
I mean, they keep throwing ones out there, and it keeps coming to light. I read the gray mass. I don't think it's a referendum yet, but there's options and things out there that are being worked on. I mean, it's hard because half of you agree and half of you don't. You don't need half. You need 2/3.
Well, okay, so let me ask you this, because we're familiar now with Telos.
Mm-hmm.
And on the Telos network, they have already succeeded in a worker proposal system and funds and projects.
Proof of concept is perfect. I mean, and you get into a governance model that doesn't have as much friction, and it can work as intended. You know, I mean.
So what is it about EOS that causes it not to work where Telos it works? I mean, I guess in a sense, what would be the driving factor behind that?
If you want to generalize it, I'd probably say the majority of the Telos community is of the like mind. You know, I mean,
Okay.
it's about adoption. It's about, I'll call it, you know, bleeding edge, or I call it the utopian EOS, is that, hey, what if the governance model really worked? What if, hey, we've got this built-in inflation that goes into this, you know, savings account. What if we could have an approval system and fund data development? Poof, WordProof. You know, I mean.
Right. And WordProof is, real quick, just because this is a big one.
So WordProof is basically a WordPress add-on that's really going to help bridge the chain between web developers and some of those nerds and features and blockchain. And so what it allows you to do is kind of timestamp and verify your web information on the blockchain and have validity. So say you write a blog, you timestamp it to the blockchain. If you go back and change that blog, you can always go back and verify that isn't what it was at that particular time.
Wow.
So that's a 30,000 foot view or whatever, but they've done a great job of, you know, opening and exposing it up and promoting. You know, it's going to be millions and millions of people that are going to now be exposed. They may have had some exposure, but.
So WordProof is the application that allows WordPress to operate on a blockchain?
Integrates the two.
Integrates
so,
the two?
Correct.
Okay.
It doesn't store it on the
But the key to this would
blockchain.
be, it was Telos and their worker proposal fund that got that program, right?
That is definitely been a big, I think, financial driving force behind it, as well as just, you know, development support and all sorts of other, you know, moral support, if anything.
The thing that struck me, I heard that I think Kyle at Vibes put out a Telegram message, or I can't remember where I saw it, but he mentioned that he had gotten out of the London hackathon. And there were a lot of, obviously, people there representing their technologies, and no one was representing EOS, but Telos was represented by Douglas Horn.
Correct. It's a much more focused community, you know, I mean, that's what I say, is that all sister chains have their niche, you know. And
Okay, so what is Telos' niche?
that's what they tend to be more, I guess I call it that utopian EOS, you know, hey, what if the governance system really worked and you had people that, you know, cared or at least seemed to care.
But EOS wants that, I mean.
Correct, but obviously 12 months in, we haven't quite gotten that. We had 34 million EOS that we couldn't agree to give out to anybody because everybody's.
So why? Well, I mean, what's the big difference? And I have an opinion, right?
Yeah.
I think it's because of the amount of EOS tokens that are being held on exchanges.
We disagree a little bit about that. It's not so much the EOS tokens on exchanges that are, in my opinion, causing the friction and the inability to govern. That's part of it, but again, I don't blame the exchanges for having the tokens. I more, I guess, commend them for being involved in the community at all.
Of course.
You know, I mean, there are people that, you know, hey, I don't have to take your token, and I don't whatever. So they're at least contributing.
I guess if you look at the percentages, I mean, the numbers are crazy. I guess I looked at it as they're sort of in control. The exchanges are definitely the ones voting for the top VPs on EOS, not the community per se. Was that a fair statement?
They are, yes, they are a majority of the votes that can swing, you know, different producers into different positions. But that in itself doesn't particularly, okay, they can vote somebody in. They got a lot of guys that we like in there. I mean, that have contributions to the community and are the faces of EOS in a lot of aspects. But so it's hard to blame them directly. I mean, if they were voting for only themselves or sock puppets or things like that, it's
right.
What's difficult is that of those 21, they can't come to a consensus on almost anything. I mean, you don't always have to agree on everything, but for instance, like Colin was saying, there are VPs that didn't even vote on any referendums.
Right.
It's not the exchange that didn't vote on the referendum. Matter of fact, I think the exchange's VPs voted on the referendum. Maybe not. I'd have to look at the heat map, but I don't know what the core fundamental disconnect between the two communities. I guess it's almost like the East and West.
Because, okay, so what I see in a couple weeks, right, I see Telos with a community, with a community leader. I see them very actively pursuing businesses to put their applications on Telos. So they have a goal, right? A direction that they're headed in, and I think a lot of that has to do with Douglas Horne, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Absolutely.
That's not centralization. That's leadership. Okay, but here's the thing.
You said the key word, community leadership. That's not chain leadership. That's not
and all
manipulation.
I'm saying is that when all
like
the tokens are on exchanges and the exchanges are the ones voting for the VPs, then you sort of miss out on that community. Where's the leader that's stepping up and leading the community? I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Kevin Rose with EOS New York has done a fantastic job.
One of those faces of whatever.
Exactly.
And being voted for by a lot of the exchanges. EOS New York gets a lot of votes from those bigger exchanges. That's why I say as for community contribution, you got an EOS hardware wallet yet? What do they call that? The EOS New York released it or whatever.
I didn't see
I forget what they call that, but anyway, long story short, they're definitely doing things, and that's why I can't say, look, the exchanges are voting for people that are doing something. I mean, they voted for a reason. We may not agree, and they may not be focusing on what we consider the most important things, like community and voting and governance and stuff like that. But again, that's not as much my biggest frustration. My bigger frustration is the ability for the non-exchanges, and we'll call them the whales, to be able to kind of, we'll say, band together. I don't want to call it collude or anything along that line, because it's questionable, how organized is it? But you get $1 million worth of EOS and team up with 30 of your buddies that have $1 million worth of EOS or 1 million EOS. You can push yourself up with a sock puppet to be able to claim rewards and
And this is happening.
Yes, I tend to use, well, I don't want to call anybody out, but
no problem. But I mean, I'm saying to people that a sock puppet is a fake BP that's been propped up just so someone can double their funds.
Fake's a relative term. So again, they registered as a registered.
What is the definition of a sock puppet? We'll put that on here.
Correct, right? They reg produced, said, hey, I've got an account. I want to be a block producer. And ultimately, they go into the list of all the people that are out there. And the way it works is because there's no standby producer rotation. I think it's rotate.bp and all of that, the other voter bounty initiative, is to say, hey, look, if you're getting paid for being a standby, every now and then you need to step in and sign a block. That's one of the things we do over on Telos is, that's great fun and dandy, but every now and then you got to step in and prove your server's still there and doing what it's supposed to do. Happy to pay you for it. But until that's in place, you have no way to validate that block producer machine is actually there. So if you slide in at number 90 with 40 million votes because you and 30 of your other friends all stood up sock puppets and voted for each other or whatever, so you all slide into that bottom number, we'll say. So now all of a sudden, you don't have to even have a server online. You just had to have produced or registered as a producer, and then ultimately, because you have enough votes, boom, you can start claiming your daily rewards.
So you don't even have to have a server online, and yet you can.
There's very little validation. There's we love.
That blows my mind.
We love. love the heartbeat plugin, you know, that
love
LiquidEOS
the
ran.
heartbeat
I mean,
plugin.
that basically runs on our nodes and says, here's my statistics, here's my version, here's, you know, my blacklist, you know, things like that.
Heartbeat plugin by Liquid Apps, correct?
LiquidEOS.
LiquidEOS. Sorry.
That is another of their projects, but LiquidEOS
okay,
is the
yeah.
master.
Heartbeat plugin.
It's also tied in with Loudmouth's blacklist hash.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
it takes care of both birds, one stone.
And real quick, just tell everybody what the Heartbeat plugin is for and what it offers.
So ultimately, your BP is always behind the scenes and locked down, so you don't really expose it out to the world. And, you know, it's your super secure signing server. So what ends up happening is there's no way to validate it unless it's actually signing blocks and running. There's no way to go back in there and say, well, how fast are you? What are you running? Things like that. So what ends up happening is that you can register it, and if you never get called into action, you would never know if there's a server there. So LiquidEOS came up with this solution that says, hey, on your block producer super secret node, run this piece of code that I think it's every hour, 30 minutes, so it's configurable, that goes out there and timestamps on the chain. So every hour you see a timestamp on our BP account that shows Heartbeat is alive, it's online, it's synchronized, it's not behind, it's not old versions.
Shows you what version we're running.
Correct, and validates that everything's up to snuff with the BP node. Not that we're signing blocks or anything, but if we were to be called into action, we should be good to be able to do so. And that's represented, LiquidEOS has a kind of portal that shows all the heartbeat, as well as we're big fans of the EOS Nation Scorecard. That's one of those optional accolades that...
Right, it's the heart on the... Yep.
Correct. That it's not a requirement, but hey, it's great if you have it.
Right. Well, it's great if you have it because why? Because it allows transparency.
It's another level of transparency and validation. Is that, you know, you want to see what I Vote for EOS USA has hardware-wise running as our BP sitting there waiting to step in. You can go check.
It's sort of like saying, hey, you want to see what we got under the hood?
Well, it's a validation. It's there.
A validation.
I can tell you that, you know, there are times whenever, you know, during maintenance and things like that, you know, nodes need to go offline, and it'll announce, hey, you know, that BP node's offline.
Right.
Luckily, I'm not in the mode of signing blocks on the main net, so it's not like I have to unregister to be out of the loop, but...
Real-time validation of block producers.
Of the block producing node, because it's so behind the scenes. Right. You know, everybody thinks that they're API nodes and all that.
So question. So now that's, and I remember because you told me this, that is not something that's easy to do. Easy is a relative term. I know you're going to say that.
When you say,
but you have to.
What's easy to do?
You have to. Well, it goes on your BP first of all, which is usually buried underneath all your other servers to protect it, right? So you have to get in there and you have to surgically put this little heartbeat plug-in in there.
Correct. To a nerd, I mean, it's only a few ones and zeros, you know, commands you type. But yeah, so whenever I'm installing EOS, just like any other of the add-ons or anything, or EOSIO, any of the other add-ons, the heartbeat plugin gets injected in during the install process. So whenever it fires up EOSIO.
And during the install process.
Yeah, whenever I'm building the node.
So it kind of needs to be done when you first set up your BP.
When you're doing the application install / upgrade, because that's similar of a process.
All I brought that up was for us to say this. So now, with 1.8 coming out and being tested, right? When 1.8 comes out, it's going to require all of the block producers to rebuild their nodes, correct?
Yes. So we're having to replay the chain and the logs that store all of that, because they're storing them a little different.
Perfect opportunity for any block producer who wants to be transparent to install the heartbeat plugin. Am I correct?
That's true. There's a lot of block producers that are out there that need to do upgrades to just get current. How about this? Before you install the heartbeat plugin, how about we just install a current version? If you're questionable about what versions you have, the EOS Scorecard will be happy to announce that you are running an out-of-date version and you should upgrade to something newer.
We are very pro Scorecard and heartbeat plugin.
And if you need any help doing that, let me know. I'll be happy to help anybody get their nodes upgraded to a newer version.
Hey, how cool is that? Yeah, right? That's really cool.